Hey everyone, it's me Pacific and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be using tier list to rank all of the maps in Age of Empires 4. For me, I'm coming at this from like a personal angle, kind of just basing it off of how much fun I have in each map, not necessarily the fact that it's perfectly balanced or not. So here we go, we're going to start it up with Lipany. It's an odd map. It's got lots of StarCraft vibes because there's the hills, and personally, I put Lipany at a solid A because it is just very fun. I like the fog of war mechanic, the like ambush mechanic they have in this game. It's really fun to use and it creates for some tense situations. And I actually wish that a lot more of these maps that we'll go over had the fog rather than mountains or cliffs because it's just a really fun experience. Lipany, I put it at A because it is kind of repetitive, but I think that's the only flaw in it. If we were balancing off of like perfectly balanced maps, I think Lipany would definitely go to S tier. Next is Dry Arabia, and I'm gonna be honest, it's perfectly balanced. There's nothing unique about it. So I'm gonna put it at B tier just because it being so balanced and such a classic, like it's got the nostalgia and it's perfectly balanced. I can't put it in C tier. Like if there was like another tier in the middle, I'd put it smack dab in the middle. But, you know, if you want to learn something, you want to experiment with something, Arabia is also a really good map to use as like a control, like a base. Like, okay, this is the average map. Let's try the Civ out, see what happens. Ooh, Hill and Dale. God, this is difficult. Because I gotta put it, I'm going to put it in A tier. But I would say that Lipany is better than Hill and Dale, so I'm going to put it off to the right here. I think Lipany's better. Actually, no, closer to the A is better. So I think Hill and Dale is just a little bit less boring. It's the same story as Lipany. Hill and Dale, you start on hills. There's more resources on the edges, which I like to fight over resources, but I don't like resources being concentrated. It's just my personal opinion. Hill and Dale doesn't have as much fog as Lipany, but it's basically the same map. God, King of the Hill. All right, this is what I'm gonna say. King of the Hill, if we're judging it off of a game mode, it's a great game mode. It's the only map that fits in a game mode, so we have to put it in S tier, right? But basing it off of how Age of Empires 4 plays, you know, the 3 ways to win, the landmark, the wonder thing, I'm gonna put it honestly in D tier. I don't like playing King of the Hill as a normal, like, you can kill each other, build a wonder, go to King of the Hill. Because if you control the hill, you win the game. And with the rules of Age of Empires and the Sacred Site, they don't do anything to, like, extend the Sacred Site time, so you have to defend for, like, 15-20 minutes. It's still 10. And I just think on a map like King of the Hill, where there's so many resources in the middle, that 10 minutes is just not enough to make it fun. The only times I've played on King of the Hill, I really haven't had a lot of fun. We have another map, Mongolian Heights. I would say, without a river in it, I would put it up in A. But the river, for me, puts it as a little bit of an underwhelming map. I'm not a fan of having a small amount of choke points that give you lots of map control. So Mongolian Heights, if you don't play against someone who can get boats and transports online, you only have to control 3 points, and then you have access to half of the map for free. You don't have to do anything to... But I'm not putting it in a D or an F tier, because it is really fun when you get into someone's base, because you can raid at them all different angles. It's Mongolian Heights, so map information is important because you can't just go a direction. You have to learn about the cliffs. So I'm actually going to bump it up into B tier. But slightly... Like, I think Dry Arabia is still better. But Mongolian Heights is just, that need for the map information to actually be effective, I think is really fun. Altai, it's going to D tier. I don't like Altai. I find it very infuriating to play Altai. Again, it's the same thing I said with Mongolian Heights, except I think Altai is worse. Because I've never really played an Altai match where I'm like excited or flanking happens. It's always the same thing, right? It's the same problem that all these very mountainous, very, you know, the map is restricted type maps, is it's a fight over 2 points, 3 points for 1 point, you know? There's no real, it doesn't feel like there's really any strategy other than, I scouted your base, I saw you had man-at-arms, so I built mangonels, or I saw that you had archers, so I built horsemen. Like, I feel like the element of Age of Empires, where you're running around the map, going after map control, trying to flank, do this, I feel like with maps like Altai, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Altai in a 1v1 situation I think is a little more fun because it's not like you have one base per point. You have to manage 2 points at once or 3. So I think that makes it more fun, but the average person is going to play in a 2v2 or a 3v3, so they don't get to experience that. Ancient Spires is S tier, in my opinion. I know that some of you are going to get pissed at me that I put Ancient Spires above Dry Arabia, but let me explain. I love maps where randomness is an element. I genuinely like random maps where you don't know what's going to happen. It's not balanced at all. It's not perfectly balanced. It's going to suck because you might just get, you know, shot in the foot over the randomness. But I feel like with Ancient Spires, it's not like Arabia. If you play in Arabia and you go around a forest, you know that you can move around that forest. You know that, you know, there might be a berry bush, a gold mine, a stone mine, or whatever, you know, but with Ancient Spires, you could be stuck behind a spire. You go around the spire, there's a lake, so you have to circumvent that. And I feel like it's like Mongolian Heights, where map information is key. If you don't know what's around the next corner, you can get seriously slammed, but it gets rid of the river in the middle with the 3 choke points. I've still played Ancient Spires where there's been randomly 3 choke points like Mongolian Heights, but there's also been Ancient Spires where there's a bunch of points. And the difference between an Ancient Spires and a Mongolian Heights is that when a lake spawns to kind of create that river effect where the water blocks the way, it's a lake. So to have control of that lake, you don't just put a bunch of towers and have artillery firing. You have to have boats in that lake to control it the entire time. So it also creates the element where if you want a lake, you have to actually put in more resources. You can't just do like spring galls and move them back and forth, and it's a whole thing. Yeah, that is why I put Ancient Spires in S tier. And now we have the double map combo of Warring Islands and Archipelago. And now I would say Warring Islands, Archipelago, and Boulder Bay are kind of in the same camp where they're water heavy maps, right? Archipelago and Warring Islands are not in the quick match rotation, but I don't think that's really a problem. So if we were basing it just like give like a quick 1, 2, 3, I would put Warring Islands at the top of the water maps. I think it's my favorite water map, particularly that you have the 2 islands that you're on, but there's the 2 middle islands that are the sacred sites. And I think the combo of like, which site do I pick? You know, maybe I build one of my age up buildings on that sacred site island so he can take out my main island, which is exactly what happened in one of my games, and we won because of that. Like, what happened because of Warring Islands was I got invaded from the side, and what did my buddy do? He just built a wall and my entire town died, but I could still live off of the middle islands. My only problem with Warring Islands is that there's not enough islands. It's 2 bases and 2 islands. That's all I've ever seen, is 2 bases, 2 islands. And I just think that it needs maybe 1 or 2 more islands that don't have a sacred site on it. But I think having more islands would be a lot more fun. But Warring Islands, if you haven't tried Warring Islands or Archipelago, it is a very special experience. Now we have Archipelago, and I'm going to put Archipelago in an A tier under Warring Islands because I still think the water gameplay in Age of Empires is really, really fun, in Age of Empires 4 specifically. I think the water gameplay in this game is the best it's ever been, even compared to Age 3, which had really good water gameplay. But my problem with Archipelago is it is very attacker-sided. See, on Warring Islands, you have your buddies with you on your island, right? I play a lot with 2s and 3s, so I have 1 or 2 buddies on my island. In Archipelago, everyone's on their own island, which means if you invade an island, that's it, you're done. Like, you can't have assistance from your friends. They can send in boats, and you could maybe have transport ships ready with troops in case there's an attack coming, but it's not like your buddies can like build up, or they have like unit spawns on their island ready to go because they also need to have the boats. And I feel like it's just very attacker-sided, which means that early, not necessarily early raids, but just early full-on attacks are generally like a better strategy than defending, whereas Warring Islands, I feel like it's, I would say, perfectly balanced. Oh, Black Forest. Ah, God. Age 2, man, brought this map in. I like Black Forest in Age 2. I really do not like Black Forest in Age 4. I'm going to put Black Forest on C tier. I think it's an underwhelming map, slightly. I like that there's flank routes, you know, on it. When you expand, there's more flank. Usually there's more flank routes, but at the end of the day, wherever the bases are located, there's usually only 2 or 3 points into the bases. And the difference is, you know, it's not like a Hill and Dale map or Lipany where there's usually like 3 entrances, but they're really, really close. It's that to get to one entrance or another, you have to move your units usually around a forest, so it takes a lot of time. And changing positions is just, I would argue changing positions penalizes you a lot in Black Forest, and I really don't like that. It's already a claustrophobic map as it is, so you kind of have to puzzle piece your buildings together, which has been a classic kind of shtick with Black Forest, is you need to puzzle piece your buildings. So, you know, you kind of end up expanding into the middle faster, forcefully, which I don't think is a problem. But I just feel like the actual constraint of movement makes this map not fun. And I feel like at the end of the game, all of the battles come down to like two blobs going down a corridor, like fighting each other. That's what the endgame battles of Black Forest always will be. It's not like you can do heavy cavalry flanks, and it's not like you can do heavy cavalry flanks and move positions fast enough before the guy mounts defenses. Boulder Bay, ooh, I'm tempted to put it in B tier, but I also think it's in C tier. Obviously, it's completely different than Black Forest, but I find that Black Forest is more fun. Boulder Bay has a very big problem. And it's not even that the fight for the island sucks. I think the fight for the island is very good. I think it's the fight for the other point. It has the problem that Mountain Pass has, where there's one point that you fight at. You know, a lot of water battles become battles of attrition. There's not really counter units. I mean, there kind of is, but not to the level that land units are at. So when you have Boulder Bay, it's really whoever can build the most ships fastest who has control of the entire ocean and thus the sacred point. But I find that land battles are just underwhelming, and it's got the same force as the same problem as Black Forest, where all your units kind of funnel down into one position, and I just really don't like that about Boulder Bay. I feel like if Boulder Bay actually changed and was a giant lake in the middle, I think it would be better, because I still think using transport ships is really important. I think overall, if the community got used to using transport ships a lot more and punishing people who didn't pay attention to the water, I think Boulder Bay might be a little bit more of an interesting map. Mountain Pass! I hate this map so much. I don't like Mountain Pass. There's one exception to it. If you are playing with a complete noob and you are teaching them how to play Age of Empires, Mountain Pass immediately goes to an S tier tutorial. But as an actual map itself, I absolutely hate Mountain Pass. The problem with Mountain Pass is the one entrance in between bases. One of the best things about playing most of the other maps in the games, such as Dry Arabia, even Lipany, or Ancient Spires, is that if someone's gonna raid you early, you don't know, like, you know that they're coming, but you don't know where from. So you have to put more kind of scouts, defenses, buildings. You're gonna have to pay attention to more of the map. Mountain Pass, every time I've played Mountain Pass, it has always been a race to wall the thing off. It's always been a race. It's never not. Or if you like don't need to wall it, you still slap an outpost down so you can see what they're doing, and then like send in your horses or your knights or whatever. And generally speaking, the strategy to win Mountain Pass is that's where you build, once you build the wall, right? And even if they don't build a wall, you just kind of build a wall back a little bit. You put all your troop producing buildings there. Everything goes there, which means that you have 1 point to control and you have control of half of the map. Since the best strategy is to constantly build up the middle of the map and kind of like use it almost as the center of your base, it really becomes a game of who can destroy the base that's like 2 feet away from them first. If the enemy breaks your walls and you lose your whole base, you lose Mountain Pass. I've never seen a Mountain Pass game go where you capture the pass and then you still have this massive fight ahead of you to control the rest of the opponent's side. I've had one match where we took the pass and then there was a bunch of defenses built up. However, we were never stopped in our tracks to then continue. Like, it was like we never lost momentum. It was just like the defenses were there and like cost us some time. Sometimes Mountain Pass glitches out and there's more points, but most of the time it's 1 point and I just don't like it. Now, the reason it's a good tutorial map if you're playing with a noob is because it's very simple. They don't have to worry about early raids. They can get used to, you know, there's always gonna be a battle at the Mountain Pass, so you can teach them to focus on their economy and the battles at the same time without adding in the third element of early raiding. Nagari, ooh, so difficult. Nagari is really hard for me to place because it's just, I can't feel comfortable putting it in A tier. I'm putting it in B tier. I would say it's not quite where Dry Arabia is, but I think it's almost there to kind of like that good balanced map. What I really like about Nagari is the way that the mountain passes are set up. I don't like that it's only 2 points. It's really only 2 points. There's always going to be that lake in the middle that messes you up with the mountains, that floods you into 2 points. What I like about it, though, is that the points where you can wall off are always going to be close to your base. There's always going to be one close, one far. And it's a real pain to hold the side without the mountain pass. So what that means is usually you have one side that's defendable and one side where you're kind of being more offensive. And there's the lake in the middle, which means you can also look out for river flanks. So it's kind of like, think of a French pass, but with another way in between the pass. And it can lead to some very interesting fighting. However, I feel like there is always a lot of fighting in the middle, which makes it really, really hard to get your docks online. If both you and your enemy are skilled enough to where you can both put your docks online really, really fast, Nagari is really, really fun. Because you have battles going on in the lake in the middle, you have battles on the sides, you have, transports, who's gonna sink who, where you can get flanked from the water, it's great. But if the skill level is not there where someone gets walled off from access to the middle lake, it just kind of becomes French pass, but the other person has map control. Actually, because of that, I'm gonna move it down to C tier. Confluence! I don't like this map, it's boring. I really don't like Confluence. Except for 1v1s. I feel like in 1v1s, Confluence gets bumped up to an A tier because of kind of the management of stuff. But I don't like Confluence because it's kind of like Mongolian Heights. But there's, no matter how many players you put on the map, there is at all times 2 points that you have to control, right? Maybe if you guys are fighting over a square in the middle in 1v1s, because that's where the real fun is fighting over the 2 side squares in 1v1s. But if you're playing 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, it's really not fun because you're always just fighting over 2 points. And it has the same problem with Mongolian Heights, where the only way to really flank is transport ships. And well, all you gotta do is build up some defenses so that they can never ever build a dock, and you're set. In fact, the games where we've lost very hard have all literally just been someone didn't look for transport ships and the enemy army got in because we built up all of our bases in the front of the map where all the fighting's going on. And it's the same problem as a Mongolian Heights or a Black Forest or a mountain pass, where as soon as that base goes down, it's offline. Like, no one can keep fighting. Like, all your stuff's there because it makes sense to put all your stuff there. And I find that all my Confluence matches are always the same, is fighting over 2 points to control half the map, and if a player breaks through, it's only a matter of time before the enemy team dies. But once again, I want to say 1v1s and fighting over the side squares, the side pizza slices that you don't start on, is very fun and can lead to some very interesting encounters, because now you have these kind of points where they're going to be in these points, but there's enough fields to fight each other in that kind of area. Dunabi River is very similar to Boulder Bay, except think of Boulder Bay as a river. That's literally all you have to think about. And I really enjoy the gameplay of Dunabi River. I am going to put Dunabi River slightly above Dry Arabia. Now, I know what you're going to say. You just complained about having all these points on the map that if one person controls, great, then you're screwed. The thing about Dunabi River is that there's, in reality, 4 points you need to control. So there's always going to be a cliff, a lowlands next to the other point you have to control, which is the middle river entrance, next to the other point you control, which is the one river entrance into the other base. Now, the thing about Dunabi River is the points of control are like back. They're offset by this giant landmass in the middle, which means that it's very easy to get transport ships up and running, so it gets rid of the whole like river natural wall thing. And then the middle is always separated by 2 elevations. One's a little bit more defendable, the other is down low, and most of the time has a sacred point. But whoever controls the down low can also control the middle access to Dunabi River. It's got the best of Confluence, where you're fighting over these different chunks of land, but it doesn't have the problem of having control of 2 points. Of course, there's 2 sacred sites, but I find that most of my Dunabi River games, they're very dynamic. You can switch up your strategy very easily. You're not punished by trying to attack a different point. And with exception of the river points, all of the points of interest on the map that you might want to control are bigger areas where you can flank different ways. You can have two armies start attacking at different sides. There's a lot of variety. But like a map like Dry Arabia, it still is semi-predictable. French Pass is also an F tier map, I've decided. Mountain Pass is worse. French Pass to me is Mountain Pass with 2 passes. That is French Pass to me. With one exception. If someone controls the middle of the map, they win. French Pass is supposed to be a map where you battle over 2 entrances to the middle valley, and then you battle along the valley. But you're never going to be fighting over more than 3 points. And it's not like Mongolian Heights, where the 3 points that you're battling over are, like, you can get to them easily. In French Pass, there's absolutely no way to get to your other points faster, unless it's like you control that little bottom there and like a right section slice into the other person's base. French Pass on 1 player, it's okay. It's really not fun on 1 player, 2, 3, or 4, because if you have 3 or 4 players, you just have to pick one side and overwhelm it, because the other player's army is going to be all the way over there, and they're going to have to run all the way to the mountain, and they can't like cross over to flank, you know. And I find that there's always, it's literally just a game of which side are they going to attack and which side are they going to defend. And again, early raiding is super easy to spot. I mean, most maps you really only need 2 or 3 towers to guard the French Pass. I remember I was playing with 4 people actually, and to guard a section of the pass, you know, we only needed 3 chunks of wall. I really don't see how you would be able to balance French Pass unless you gave it a Nagari treatment where there was water in between the passes. I think what would be interesting is if in the middle of French Pass, in the middle of those 2 mountains, there was just a lake. You couldn't access it by land, you had to cross it via boats. That might be interesting, but that also still has the French Pass problem where reinforcements will be slow to get to you. The last map we have is High View. This is my favorite map in the game, so you know it's going as the top map in the game. This is my favorite map in Age of Empires 4. The reason why is very simple. I love the ambushes in the middle of the map. I have had so many unique fighting encounters where normally something that would happen because a Mongol player invaded me and I was Holy Roman Empire, something bad would have happened, but because my soldiers could stealth and the Mongol player didn't have a scout, I won. It reminds me of just why, like, you need information in these kinds of games. You're building towers to try to keep an eye on stuff. The only problem I have with this map is that a bunch of the resources spawn on the edges of the map, so you're kind of always creeping on the edges. But I feel like this is the map where building different bases in different locations with different town centers is really cool. You feel like you're building a camp hidden and they have to find it. And I think High View highlights, no pun intended, the ambush mechanic really well in Age of Empires 4. And if you understand how it works, this new mechanic, you have a fighting, you get an advantage. And it also gives the player who looks for information a huge advantage compared to the player who never uses scouts, because you can see guys coming and they don't know who's coming after them. So guys, that is it. That is my tier list for Age of Empires 4. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you think deserves to be on top and what deserves to be on bottom. I'm Pacific, and I will see you guys in the next one.